Ever wonder what really goes on behind the scenes of a team that looks perfectly united on game day? Some teammates can't stand each other, and the stories behind their tension are wild. From heated locker room moments to rivalries that never cooled off, these clashes will shock you. Let's get into it. The NFL is supposed to be about teamwork, but sometimes that team turns into pure hate. These are the teammates who went from brothers in arms to straight-up enemies, and it got ugly fast. Let's start with one of the most dangerous feuds in NFL history, Michael Irvin versus Everett McIver. What started as a stupid argument over a haircut almost ended with a man bleeding out in the locker room. During Cowboys training camp in the 90s, Irvin, the loudest voice on the team, walked into the facility and saw McIver, a younger lineman, getting his hair cut. Irvin exploded, yelling seniority like it was a military order. McIver refused to move. Words turned into shoves. Then, in a split second of rage, Irvin grabbed a pair of scissors and stabbed McIver in the neck. He missed the man's main artery by inches. McIver was rushed to the hospital while Irvin stood there realizing he nearly killed a teammate over a lineup. The Cowboys had to pay 6 figures under the table just to make it disappear. That wasn't team chemistry. That was straight madness. But somehow, Irvin wasn't the only one who brought violence into the locker room. Years later, Bill Romanowski, one of the dirtiest players in NFL history, snapped during Raiders training camp. A backup tight end named Marcus Williams embarrassed him on a block during practice. Instead of shaking it off like a pro, Romanowski ripped off Williams' helmet and smashed him in the face. The punch shattered Williams' eye socket and knocked out his teeth. The man was left unconscious on the field, bleeding. That single hit ended his career. Romanowski walked away like nothing happened, yelling at him to never hold him again. He wasn't just hated by opponents, his own teammates feared him. But not every fight came from brute force. Some came from pride, like the legendary war between Terrell Owens and Donovan McNabb. At first, they were unstoppable. The flashy receiver and the calm quarterback, a perfect duo, right? Nope. Owens believed McNabb refused to throw him the ball when he was open. McNabb thought Owens was obsessed with himself and his fame. Their tension exploded during the Eagles' Super Bowl run. Owens played injured and balled out, 9 catches, over 120 yards. But after the loss, he fired shots, saying maybe they would have won if he got the ball more. Then, he took a jab at McNabb for throwing up in the huddle from exhaustion. The next season, things got worse. Owens publicly said the team would be better off with Brett Favre instead of McNabb. That was it. The Eagles shipped him out. And to this day, Owens still says he'd knock the chunky soup out of McNabb if he ever saw him again. That's not beef. That's a lifetime grudge. But no one threw hands like Steve Smith. Smith was one of the toughest, loudest receivers in NFL history, and that temper came out during a Carolina Panthers training camp. During a water break, he got into it with cornerback Ken Lucas. Trash talk turned into a full-blown brawl. Smith threw a punch so hard it broke Lucas's nose. Coaches had to drag them apart while Lucas was carted off with ice on his face. Both were suspended, but Smith didn't care. He walked into the next practice like nothing happened. That was just Steve being Steve. And if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what happened with Geno Smith and IK Enemkpali, because that one didn't just ruin friendships. It changed careers. The fight between Steve Smith and Ken Lucas was wild, but nothing compares to the moment Geno Smith got his jaw shattered by his own teammate. This wasn't some fiery star versus star beef. This was a $600 argument that spiraled into one of the most embarrassing moments in Jets history. Geno agreed to appear at teammate IK Enemkpali's youth football camp. Flights, hotel, everything was already paid for by IK, but Geno never showed. When training camp rolled around, IK asked for half the money back. Fair enough, right? Instead, Geno brushed him off. Then, with every camera rolling, IK finally confronted him. Geno basically told him, "What are you gonna do if I don't pay?" And IK did exactly what Geno wasn't expecting. He punched him so hard that Geno's jaw broke instantly. The quarterback had to get surgery. IK was cut that same day. Geno lost his starting job. One punch, one moment, derailed both men's careers. That wasn't just hate. That was career-destroying stupidity. But things didn't always get violent. Sometimes the most painful feuds came from the people you'd least expect, like Peyton Manning versus his own kicker, Mike Vanderjagt. Manning was a young superstar still trying to shake that can't win in the playoffs label. Meanwhile, Vanderjagt, one of the most accurate kickers at the time, decided to go on national TV and throw his entire team under the bus. He said the Colts would never win a Super Bowl with Manning and coach Tony Dungy because they were too soft. He basically called the team weak. Peyton's response at the Pro Bowl instantly became legendary. He clowned Vanderjagt as the idiot kicker who got liquored up and ran his mouth. That was the beginning of the end. A year later, Vanderjagt missed a playoff kick so badly it practically flew into another zip code. The Colts cut him and replaced him with Adam Vinatieri, who helped them win a Super Bowl the next season. Vanderjagt talked himself out of a ring, out of the locker room, and out of the league. But if there's one teammate no one could stand, it was Percy Harvin. Harvin was electric on the field, but behind closed doors, he turned the Seahawks receiving room into a disaster zone. The worst moment hit during Super Bowl week. Reporters asked Golden Tate to talk about Harvin's availability since he'd been injured. Tate gave a normal answer, something like the team could win with or without him. Harvin took that personally and attacked Tate at the team hotel, punching him in the face and slamming him into a trash can. That moment instantly made Doug Baldwin, the leader of the group, despise him. Harvin never apologized. The tension carried into the next season. They argued in meetings, at practice, even before preseason games. The Seahawks couldn't take it anymore. They traded him mid-season just to stop the chaos he caused inside the locker room. And speaking of chaos, the feud between Michael Westbrook and Stephen Davis was another brutal one. Westbrook, a Washington receiver, had a habit of trash-talking his teammates. After he called Davis soft, Davis clapped back. What happened next became one of the most infamous fights in NFL history. With no pads on and cameras rolling, Westbrook tackled Davis, pinned him to the ground, and unleashed a barrage of punches straight to his face. It looked like a street fight, not football practice. Westbrook was fined $50,000, a massive amount back then, and his career never really recovered. Davis, meanwhile, moved on and dominated for years, and as insane as these fights were, none of them reached the level of pure toxicity that came from the next feud, one of the darkest in NFL locker room history. It involved bullying, betrayal, mental health, and a teammate pushed to a breaking point. What happened between Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin wasn't a fight. It wasn't trash talk. It was straight-up psychological warfare, and it became the darkest teammate feud the NFL has ever seen. Martin entered the Dolphins' locker room as a quiet, humble rookie. Incognito was already a known bully, a guy with a temper, a history of dirty hits, and a reputation for taking things way too far. But nobody realized how sick things were about to get. Incognito didn't just tease Martin. He targeted him. He insulted him daily. He used racist comments. He used threats. He used the kind of words that crush someone mentally, not just physically. Things escalated when Dolphins players walked out of a restaurant and purposely left Martin with the bill. It was the final straw. Martin left the team in an emotional meltdown. At first, media thought it was just locker room drama. Then the messages leaked. Thousands of texts and voicemails filled with hate, racial slurs, homophobic insults. Threats so disgusting, the league had no choice but to step in and launch an investigation. Incognito claimed it was locker room bonding. Martin revealed he was battling depression and suicidal thoughts. His career never recovered. Incognito was suspended a full season, his name becoming forever linked to one of the most shameful scandals in NFL history. And as shocking as that was, the final feud on this list might be the most public and most toxic. Antonio Brown versus Ben Roethlisberger. They were once unstoppable together. For years, Big Ben made AB look like a top 3 receiver every season. But AB's ego grew fast, and so did Ben's frustration. Every time Ben missed AB on a route, AB exploded. He smashed coolers, screamed at coaches, and called out teammates. Ben fired back through radio interviews. AB fired right back on social media. Inside the locker room, the feud kept growing, getting uglier each week. The breaking point came in the final week of the 2018 season. After Ben told the coaches to replace AB during practice, AB grabbed a ball, threw it at Ben, and stormed out. He skipped practice. He skipped meetings. And when he showed up on game day acting like nothing happened, the team benched him on the spot. That was it. Friendship over. Team chemistry gone. AB never wore a Steelers uniform again. Years later, AB is still taking shots at Ben online, proving this beef never died. And that's the truth about the NFL. Talent wins games, but hate Hate destroys teams from the inside out.